Welcome back to another episode of 5 Fact Friday, where we share 5 fun facts about a specific whiskey or wine topic, and hopefully you're going to learn something. Let's go. Today we're going to be talking about a conversation that we kind of touched on previously, but not in this manner. We're going to be talking about barrel aging, or specifically aging in a rickhouse, and some of the interesting things that are going to happen there. Because obviously there are some big things that everyone is aware of, but there are some really kind of nerdy, nitty-gritty things that happen, and we're going to talk about a couple of those today. The first one we're going to talk about is honestly the most obvious that everyone really knows happens. This is going to be heat. Obviously, when you are aging whiskey, when you have a lot of heat in your rickhouse, you're going to get basically a nicer influence. Some people think it's nicer to have a cooler environment. If you're looking at some places like Scotland or Ireland when they're aging, it's a little bit cooler. Or for bourbon, you're looking at aging just with a little bit more heat, specifically if you're down in like Texas or Georgia or Kentucky, Tennessee, things like that. Backing up just a little bit, for those of you guys who don't know, a rickhouse is just going to be where they traditionally store barrels. This is going to be going back, I forget how many years, but there's a really interesting patent and a history back there that I should really get into on a different day. But just know it's where they store their barrels. These are traditionally made out of wood. They're going to be ricks, and you just roll the barrels into there and you have them all stacked up laying on their side. So in this rickhouse, especially in the summer, these places get really warm. These are not temperature controlled, so you're going to have a lot of influence from that heat. Now, there are a lot of distilleries that are aging in temperature controlled climates now, which is interesting. And I say it's interesting because, again, a lot of people assume you want more heat. You don't necessarily want more heat, but what you want is a nice fluctuation. So when you have a good fluctuation of temperature where it's going high and then it's getting cool, that is going to force the liquid to go into the barrel and then come back out of the wood, going through that char layer and picking up some of those, just the compounds that we want in whiskey. Whether you're finalizing and aging something in a secondary barrel so you can get like that red wine impact, ice wine impact, sherry impact, whatever it is, or if you're just double oaking and you want a lot of that oak flavor, or just single use barrel making bourbon and just wanting it to get a little bit more of that barrel influence. You want it to have those big heat differences, those temperature changes. When you look at some places like, again, Ireland or Scotland, where it's a cooler temperature, you're not going to get quite as much of that barrel influence quite as quickly. So that's where you're gonna see a lot of these are older age stated. And then if you look somewhere down in like Texas or Kentucky, some of these are going to be a lot shorter age stated, or they may be in a temperature controlled warehouse, or may get moved to a temperature controlled warehouse to make sure they don't basically get over oaked and get really heavy tannin and drying, just not a great flavor. The other side of this, like I mentioned, are the places that are doing the temperature controlled warehouse the entire time. You'll notice their spirits are going to be a little bit lighter and probably less aggressive on that oak note. One of the other big factors that's going to go into this that not a lot of people really think about is going to be the humidity. Now, we're going to forget about temperature for a second, and we're just going to think about the humidity. If you have a lot of humidity or moisture in the air, this is going to cause some interesting things to happen with your barrel. Essentially, if it's a lot of water out here, you're not going to get as much water to evaporate out of the barrel, but your alcohol is still going to evaporate. So you're going to end up usually having your proof drop. Now, if you have high temperature and high humidity, you're going to get that proof to probably rise a little bit, but with a lower humidity, high temperature, that proof is still going to rise a lot more. Now, looking on the flip side of that, if you have low temperature, low humidity, well, your proof is gonna probably slowly drop a little bit, but if you have low temperature, high humidity, your proof is gonna drop a lot faster, just because of the environment outside of the barrel is going to cause the inside of the barrel to function differently. With liquid or water in the air, water's not going to want to evaporate quite as quickly. Now, there's a way that distilleries found out how to get rid of this issue, and that's the next piece of this, which again I found very interesting, and it's airflow. You don't always talk about airflow, but if you've ever walked into a rickhouse, a lot of the times they do have windows. If they don't have windows, they usually have maybe a big door somewhere where you're going to get a lot of airflow coming through, and these are typically going to be on that lower level. And then usually something at the top, and that's going to force the air to come in and then go out the top, and that is going to move all of that humidity and the air around. If you're flushing out that humidity, that's going to allow basically your aging process to go a little bit quicker and nicer if you want your proof to rise. And for the most part, we do want the proof to rise. We don't want it to drop below 40 because as soon as, 80 proof or 40% alcohol, as soon as it drops below that, can't really make it a whiskey again unless you blend it with something much higher proof. So keeping it with a higher proof once it goes into the barrel is going to be much easier to deal with because you can always proof it down with water. So having that airflow is definitely going to be something that helps a lot, and that a lot of distillers are going to use to make sure that their product is aging properly. Diving into the next part of it, another one of these aspects of aging is going to be pressure. Now, I'm not just talking about the pressure like within the barrel, I'm talking about where the rickhouse is set, and is that somewhere that's low or is it somewhere that's high pressured? You're gonna get different pressures obviously as the seasons change, the barometric pressure, but that's not gonna have the biggest impact on it. It's gonna be more so the pressure of just what is the elevation? Is this somewhere that is gonna be a lot lower elevation or somewhere that has much higher elevation? If you compare distillers, and this is also gonna have a different issue with it as well, but if you compare two distilleries, one that's like way up in the mountains and one that's way down in the valley, their product is gonna turn out different, even if they use the same or distill the same maturation, same fermentation, everything, they're gonna turn out different because of those pressure differences. Now, yes, there are gonna be some other issues with like the fermentation that's gonna take a little bit more energy at the higher altitude, and it's just, there's a lot that changes, but with the maturation, that is going to play a factor to it. The last key part I want to talk about is something that's a little interesting, and if you're relatively new to whiskey, or even if you've been in it for a little bit, you may not have realized this. But when you are aging a spirit, or let's just say we got our whiskey here, we take our barrel, we stick one at the top of the rickhouse, we stick one at the bottom of the rickhouse, and we just forget about it. A lot of people assume that that top one, because it is by all the heat, because it's higher up, that one's proof is just going to keep rising and rising and rising and then eventually top out somewhere. And a lot of people think that top out is going to be just becoming 100% alcohol. That's not actually the case. And same on the flip side, if I put something down at the bottom, it's not just going to keep dropping off until it hits zero. There's going to be a leveling point in every single rickhouse, in every single rick, every single spot. There is going to be a plateau that will be hit. Now, this plateau will be hit at different speeds and at different basically rates, depending on all of those things that we just talked about with the heat, the humidity, the airflow, all that fun stuff. But eventually, with the environment that that barrel is in, you will not get any more water or alcohol to evaporate faster than the other. It'll hit a point where it's like everything will evaporate at the same rate. So let's say right when we put it in, we go in at 125 proof. And then for the top, you're getting your water to evaporate faster, faster, faster. And then we get up to, let's say 140 proof. Once you're at that 140 proof, you're going to have the equal parts of water and alcohol evaporating at that point. So you're still gonna lose, obviously, your distillate, but it is not going to proof up or proof down. Now, you'll get a little bit of a wiggle, but that's not really to be worried about. Now, the same is said when you go down. So if I put one on the bottom where it's more humid, it's cooler, that spot is going to keep going down until maybe we hit 90 proof. And then once it hits 90 proof, now we are at 50% alcohol, 50% water leaving the barrel. Not 50-50 exactly, but 50-50 leaving the barrel. And that's gonna make it become stagnant at whatever proof that is. This is really interesting because if you find that sweet spot, you can figure out, okay, I can age something here and make it continue to get basically my nice oaky flavors, but I'll be able to keep it at this proof. And that's something that master distillers play with to really make sure they're getting the product that they want. The maturation process is very interesting. Obviously, you can play with everything from obviously the grains that you're distilling, how you want to actually make your cuts for the distilling, how you want your fermentation to go, how long you're fermenting, yeast strains, all of this stuff. And then again, when you get to maturation, there are all these choices you can make, and it is going to vastly change the product that you get. It's a ton of fun, it's exceptionally nerdy, and this is why the master distillers are the master distillers that they are. They know all the ins and outs of these things. They're conversing with people and looking at the science behind it and playing with it a lot, honestly, to come up with the best way to give us, the consumers, the best product. If you made it to the end of the video, just want to say I appreciate you. And if you're one of our subscribers, double appreciate you. And if you're not subscribed, think about liking this video, leaving a comment, and then subscribing. We try to do this every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Friday is going to be a little bit of our more nerdy day, if you will. But congrats, guys. You made it to the weekend. Cheers. I'll see you on Monday.